Welcome to another episode of the Got a World to See podcast. Today, with my guest Kieran, also known as Coach Kezza. We met in Bali, and this guy's an absolute legend. He's going out with people to waterfalls, to do meditations, and mostly we talked about things like how to have more confidence, how to let go of this certain anxiety that we all tend to feel within us, and talked about his story, how in his childhood he was really struggling with anxiety, call it even depression. And then we talked about meeting girls, confident when it comes to that. And I had a really good time sitting down with Kieran, and I hope you will enjoy it as well. Coming for you from Bali to wherever you are.
You're depressed because of this reason, or you're anxious because of this chemical imbalance, or you're always lonely because of this thing that happened in your childhood. And I'll be like, cool, now why don't I feel better? Just because I know the answer now, I know why I'm like this, but how do I change it? Able to say, I think you're pretty, I would love to take you for coffee. But at the same time also be capable of receiving rejection and be completely fine. So that never, bro, I couldn't even speak to a girl before.
That's a secret.
So I just somehow love doing that.
Welcome back to the Got a World to See podcast. It's a spiritual water, man.
Yeah, bro.
All right, 3, 2, 1. And with that, welcome back to the Got a World to See podcast. Today in Bali with my guest, Kieran. So Kieran is an anxiety coach, and we met briefly at the gym a few days ago. There's a funny backstory to that, but I would say we're going to jump into today, talk about your story a little bit, I would say about anxiety, about why you live in Bali, and just generally whatever will come up. I was like, are you open to like a little bit of edgy stories? We'll see what's going to happen.
I can be pretty edgy if I need to be, right? So we'll see what happens. I'm excited.
You don't need to be. We'll see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
She's pretty vocal.
So tell us about the dog.
So Bubbles, just to give you a quick summary, I was taking shelter in a temple from the rain, and I saw this dog with scabies, barely any fur on her, scratches, bleeding, wandering around the temple, skinny. And she kept returning to this cardboard square, and I wondered what she was doing. So I called my friends at Bali Paws, they're an adoption agency, self-run and self-made. And they were saying that her breeder, she was bred, had clearly dumped her because of her skin disease, and they didn't want to take care of her. And so there I am thinking, what the heck do I do? And they said, look, we're full. We can't take any more dogs. You're going to need to take her. So I wrapped her in my shirt. I did not want scabies. Trust me, you do not want scabies. And I took her home, got her some medication, got her the vet, got some injections. And and since then she's been furring all up, which is good, putting some weight on.
All right, so for everyone who's just listened to the audio version, we have like a little scruffy dog here on Kieran's lap.
That's right.
So she's getting better.
Yeah, man.
All right,
she's a little Papillon is the breed. So yeah, she's gonna get
You were like,
real
looks a
fluffy.
little bit like an old Chinese man.
Oh, literally, bro. She's got like the dope mustache and everything. It's great.
All right. Well, let's get into it, bro. What's your story? You said New Zealand. You're a real Kiwi.
I could be a real Kiwi.
I don't know what that means.
So yes, I am a real Kiwi. All right. So in the flesh. And a little bit about my story. I guess if you wanted to know a little bit maybe of how I became an anxiety coach, how I came here to Bali.
Yeah, I mean, I would say whatever is like just general biography, upbringing, but then kind of like a certain, let's say, a turning point where, I looked a little bit through your stuff. It seemed like there were like a turning point, a time where things weren't going that great. Kind of like that. Grew up, just normal life.
Yeah, man.
School.
So I honestly, from the outside, it wouldn't have looked like I lived a really tough life. Like, I mean, I did have deaths in the family, a friend that died. Sure, difficult times, but I wasn't starving on the street with no home, right? It's not like I was thrown out of my house.
Not like Bubbles.
No, exactly. I did not live the life of Bubbles.
The dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yet I still had all these struggles. I felt insanely lonely. I always felt like the add-on in my friend group. So there'd be my two friends, and I felt like the third addition. I was never the friend, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's what I felt like. I felt very secluded, never in the cool group, could never get a girlfriend. All my friends would. I'd never figure it out. Felt very lonely, very sad quite a lot of the time. I'd have to pump myself up in the morning by listening to some dope reggae in the mornings. And I just couldn't figure out why I felt the way I did, and why I didn't have the confidence that everyone else did. So I really struggled. I was very depressed, and I'd start seeing counselors, to the point where, sure, I started to gain an understanding of what was going on, but it didn't solve it. I didn't start to feel better. I didn't start to think differently. None of that stuff changed, even though I'd see these counselors. So all along this, there was eventually a turning point where it just got so painful. I honestly didn't know what to do, and I was just at that point where I was just willing to try anything. So I remember one point I was literally in the same room as my girlfriend at that point in time. We were living in a studio. She was in the kitchen cooking dinner for me. I was sitting down on the couch, and I just curled up in the fetal position, man, just freaking out, shaking, hyperventilating, like. And she came over and asked me what was wrong, and I'm there freaking out. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm freaking out. I'm just so stressed. I'm so overwhelmed. And this is a few years back now. And I just didn't know. I didn't know that was a panic attack. I didn't know that was anxiety. And fast forward another couple of years, there's been multiple times where I'd have panic attacks. Like I was just down at the beach, and the girl I liked wasn't interacting with me the way I thought that she would normally, and we're in a group. So I just started getting a panic attack. And it's not a situation where you think, oh, that's unreasonable to get a panic attack. Yet I did. And I'd freak out, and I'd be very jealous.
You were at the beach, and you said there was a girl that you liked that knew you? There
was a girl that I liked. We'd just been seeing each other for a bit, and it's just because of that subtle change in her actions and her way of being around me, I instantly created these assumptions in my mind that she was no longer into me. Just this big story. Just simply because I wasn't comfortable in my own company, I was seeking someone else so desperately. And there would be multiple situations. I mean, I remember being at a bar, getting a panic attack. I remember walking through a mall, just for no reason at all, getting a panic attack. And it took me a while to come to an understanding that it was because ultimately my brain, my intelligence was working against me because I hadn't taken the time to actually invest in myself in that way. Because every time I'd be alone, I'd distract myself with my phone, with music, with anime. I love my anime. With the gym, I'd just constantly distract myself from my own thoughts, from my own emotions, thinking I had to constantly push through. Now,
that's huge.
Yeah, and because I wasn't looking at what was going on deep down, I couldn't do anything about it. It just got worse. So the turning point was actually the moment where I finally stumbled across someone that made sense in a more conscious level, rather than just trying to create reasoning behind things. So in the past, I'd always get told, oh, you're depressed because of this reason, or you're anxious because of this chemical imbalance, or you're always lonely because of this thing that happened in your childhood. And I'll be like, cool, now why don't I feel better? Just because, like, I know the answer now, I know why I'm like this, but how do I change it? So
I think that's very, very big. That back in the day, I thought if I'm going to understand the things, I will be able to just kind of like shift and be like, oh, I know what is happening now. Now I just know to do the other thing. And really for years when I got into, let's say, personal development, and I started to realize the reasonings for why that is, I think most people, they get like pretty much paralyzed just by not knowing what is going on. They're just like, oh, I'm down, I don't feel great, this is happening, why are people treating me like that? You get into the victim mentality, and you're just like, oh no, everything is against me. And then once you slowly start to realize why that is, you kind of like start to feel uplifted, which is a great first step. But then, that was for me like 1 year, 2 years down the road, I'm like, I understand all of this now, but not much changes. And that's where I realized that that's just a start. You know, with girls, with my fitness, with some own behaviors that were kind of like pushing me down. And still to this day, I'm like realizing more and more why that is. But these days I'm like, oh, that's cool. Now I can put in the 5 years to like fix that, you know?
Literally like that, man. It is. It's the initiation. In more ancient script, they talk about when it comes to things like anxiety or unpleasant emotions, if you're wanting to heal it, there's 3 steps that go before it. They say, you need to first become aware, which is just that process. So aware, okay. But then you need to find it, which is awareness. You need to face it. So that's the step. That's the second step's not even taken. People think that you can go straight from finding it to healing it. You still need to face it, which means actually taking time to sit with it, taking time to actually understand it. And you can't understand it just by using maybe a form of journaling or just by doing research online or getting someone to tell you what it is. You need to understand it by first completely looking at it. And what I mean by that is if you can close your eyes and be with an emotion, that's when you're truly with it. Because if I'm constantly focused on things outside of me, I'm not really looking at my emotion. I can't roll my eyes backwards behind my head and actually look at the emotion. It doesn't work like that. I've actually got to close my eyes and feel the emotion.
Starting to rain.
I'm just sort of paying attention
Probably
to that.
will pour like crazy in just a second.
And I'm just realizing a camera.
What about it?
Is it okay?
Well, Bali rainy season, man. I think we will have to move in a few seconds. Yeah, I guess we'll just sit down under the roof there once we're getting there. Yeah, man. So you were saying about sitting with an emotion?
Yeah. So sitting with an emotion. So I'm gonna ask a question about intellect because oftentimes people think that if they figure it out in their mind, they'll figure out how to change the emotion. And this is where I was being very counteractive with changing how I felt. Because I'll take the anxiety and I'll try to be rational about it. Because my anxiety felt irrational. It was like I was trying to use logic to go against something that didn't seem logical. It was like, I don't find logic in my anxiety, yet my mind is wanting to try and find logic with something that seemed illogical. So it was very counteractive and it created more friction because now I'm thinking, but I should feel this way when I feel that way. And then it will create more friction because I'd beat myself up for experiencing an emotion I didn't want to experience. So it'd make it worse. It's like basically getting a cut, but then the cut gets infected. So it's not just a cut now, it's not just a sore, it's now infected as well and it's causing more damage. And that's what was happening with my emotions as I was judging them, which led to the infection. So when it comes to, it's starting to free up.
Awesome. I was positive about it. The rain is gone.
That optimism, mate, look at that.
Dude, the freaking law of attraction. I was like, I'm visualizing sun right here. It's coming.
Mate, it's coming.
No, I don't. I was already moving in my mind. I was like looking for options. It's like both, It's like on the one side, Let's keep going.
All right, I love that. And so when it came to trying to use my intelligence, my intellect to figure out the emotion, the reason why I was counteractive is because of this. Would you want your intelligence, your intellect to be sharp or blunt? What would you want?
Sharp or blunt? Sharp, like, how would you define that? Sharp as if like very precise, rational, or
Sure. Yeah, I mean.
and blunt?
Sharpness of intellect. I mean, if I'm going into an exam, I'd probably want my intellect to be sharp, right?
What would you say? What is blunt?
So blunt meaning dull. Like I don't want to be dull, do I?
God, dull.
Yeah.
Another word. I think my English is that good, but I'm like, what is
Okay.
dull? What does it mean?
Blunt, dull.
Blunt is just like straight up, just.
So sharpness of intellect or sharpness of intelligence would be if I asked a question, boom, you're there. But dull would be if I asked you a question, you'd be like,
oh, did I want to be sharp?
Yeah, exactly.
Sharp like a knife.
Literally. Yeah. And that's exactly the way you'd want to put it as well, because that's what the intellect is like, is it's sharp like a knife, which means it's a cutting tool. So it takes something and it cuts it, meaning if I'm going to look at a maths question and I want to figure it out, I'm going to dissect it, meaning I'm cutting it into pieces in my mind to figure out the answer, you see? So that's how the intellect works. So it's a very scientific tool, which is why when you're observing things in science, you'll look at the problem, you'll dissect it into little portions and pieces to try come to the answer or the conclusion. So that's how people come up with the hypothesis, because they'll cut it up into logical sort of pieces and then come up with the hypothesis and then go through and then try and figure out the answer through tests and trials. So that's what the intellect is, right? It looks at something, cuts it open, and figures it out. Now, can you cut an emotion? That's my point. So I was constantly trying to use something that's used to dissecting things to open them up, to try to figure out something that can't be cut. And it's not logical. So instead of actually trying to figure it out, it was actually coming to a sense of, okay, well, sitting with it and actually closing my eyes and being with the emotion and becoming and addressing what I call, I'll explain this in a second, the spider on the table, makes me feel more safe in the emotion. Now, if I experienced anxiety, but I wasn't scared and I wasn't fearful, the anxiety wouldn't be so bad, would it? Because normally if I experience anxiety, I'm very afraid, I'm very fearful, I don't know what's happening, I get very skeptical. So that's what anxiety is like. Now, if I was to experience anxiety but not have that fear, I'll just be like, oh, I'm just really stressed, but I'm okay, I can figure this out. So that's the difference in trying to logically explain my anxiety to actually feeling safe within my anxiety. So the spider on the table analogy I'm talking about is this. If there was a spider on the table right here, on this table, right, and we're trying to have this conversation, where would your attention be? If it was a big spider. Oh, yeah, of course.
Big ass spider.
Yeah. Because it's a scary thing. Okay, so now anxiety is
I used to own a spider, actually.
No.
Yeah.
What? Who are you?
There's a lot of things you don't know, man.
You are not welcome.
Dude, I've been through so many different things. I've been the spider nerd for like 2-3 years. I had like a big ass spider, and it's actually quite a funny, embarrassing story of why I wanted to get rid of it at the end. But it died after a few years, and I was actually quite sad then. The name of her was Trixie.
Trixie
the spider, yeah.
Damn.
I was like
That's actually pretty creepy
11,
name,
12, 13. Dude, a lot of people own like spiders, snakes. Yeah.
I don't know these people.
No,
For a good reason.
I used to own, I used to own a spider. Used to own like many aquariums, but a spider was a little bit out there. Yeah. Basically, at the end of it, I was like, I want to be like more normal now. I want to invite girls over. How the fuck can I do that with a spider?
Literally, yeah. Like,
that was me at like 13, 14. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but looking back at it, I should have just rocked it. I should be like, baby, come in. I'll show you a little secret.
Oh, man.
I'll show you my spider. Yeah.
It's Trixie.
You will see.
Oh, she's very, man.
You'll remember me forever.
Oh,
No,
man.
I mean, looking back at it, it's pretty funny that but sorry for like, we're back to the spider on the table. It's not Trixie. It's another much more intimidating spider. Very fearful. Trixie she was just hanging out all day. She wasn't doing anything.
So she's not super scary. Okay.
No.
So we don't have Trixie here. We've got another spider that you might see in Australia.
Maybe
so
a little slimy and like aggressively looking.
Yeah, maybe one of those with a, like a redback spider, with the red back. They kill you in like half an hour, that sort of thing. So yeah. So imagine like maybe a redback spider is sitting here. So clearly our attention would go to the redback spider and freak out. Oh shit, right. So no matter how hard I tried to concentrate on you, I'd always be focused on the spider. Why? Because it's scary. So no matter how hard I try to ignore my anxiety, no matter how hard, I'm always going to be looking at it. Okay, I'm always going to be focused on it. Even if I'm trying to focus on the conversation, even if I'm trying to go about my day, I'm trying to work, I'm trying to create relationships, I'm trying to be a good boyfriend, a good husband, whatever, right? If I'm anxious, my focus subconsciously will always go towards the anxiety, and I'll always start rejecting and freaking out about my own emotion. So this is very negative work. I can't just avoid a situation that's there. If the spider's there, I can't just ignore it. It's gonna freaking bite me. So here's the key. Have you seen those YouTube videos where you might see like guys with spiders or snakes crawling on them, right?
Yeah.
It's because they've taken time to learn how to face that fear, right? Mm-hmm. So same thing. I'm not going to, I don't want to, but I could take time if I wanted to learn how to face my fear with spiders, right?
Progressive desensitization, right?
Exactly. So the same, but I can't do it in a place, if I'm always freaking out about the spider, I can't actually face the fear of the spider. So I've actually got to sit down with the spider and learn to create a better relationship with spiders within myself. Same thing with anxiety. I have to sit down, I have to learn to be with anxiety in a way where I'm not rejecting it. Same thing. Because otherwise I'm always going to be afraid of the spider. I'm always going to be afraid of the anxiety. If I'm always reacting to my own emotion, then I'm constantly in a self-sabotaging state, which means that everything that's happening within me, I'm rejecting. So I'm constantly rejecting my own state, which means I'm, again, infecting it and making it worse. So now it's not just I'm anxious, it's I'm anxious about my anxiety, or it's not just I'm depressed. I'm really depressed about my depression. I'm just sad because I'm sad. So it's this constant cycle.
How do you mean it in terms of, is there anything you want to add, or is that?
One more thing, I need to do it intentionally. So if I'm just in a place where, Kieran said I need to learn to face my fear with anxiety, so I'm just going to sit with it. It's not just about sitting with it, it's about sitting with it with intention of, I'm here to face it in a way where I'm learning to accept it. Because again, back to the 4-step process with more ancient Buddhist script, when it comes to facing an emotion, it's not just about finding it and facing it. Sorry, not just finding it and feeling it, then you've got to face it. So it's find it, feel it, face it, heal it. So that means you've got to find it, which people already can do. They can just feel the anxiety straight away. Feel it, not just mean rejecting it or it's going on within yourself, but you're constantly trying to stop it. It's actually trying to allow that feeling to happen. Because if you imagine this water bottle here, okay, if this is anxiety within myself, at the end of the day, an emotion is a chemical reaction in my body. So a bunch of hormones and neurotransmitters all pumping out different chemicals in my body. And when this happens based off like anxiety or happiness, is a different chemistry in my body. Now, if that chemistry is occurring, if I'm suppressing it, it's like keeping the lid on the bottle. It's not going anywhere, okay? But if I start to feel it and allow my body to feel it, it's no longer going to apply stress hormone to try to suppress the emotion. It's going to allow it to flow like that, right? So that's what feeling an emotion does. Because at the end of the day, once I fully empty this bottle, now there's space for happiness, joy, right? There you go. Yeah, please have more water. Now there's more space.
Stop wasting the precious water.
Yeah, true, exactly. Can't do that, not here in Bali. Now there's more space for other pleasant emotions. So that's the point of feeling it. Facing it meaning coming to an understanding of how you are with it and being able to fully acknowledge and accept it. Then healing it is simply being in a place where now I completely accept anxiety as it is. And even if I'm experiencing anxiety, my self-worth, the way I see myself, the way I perceive myself isn't altered. Because
Where would you say is the anxiety coming from? I mean, it's definitely very individual, but like, what would be a few common things of where the anxiety comes from? Right now, we talk about it, let's say, on kind of like putting a general like term on it, anxiety, people having these emotions. Where is that often coming from?
So there's the terminology that a lot of scientists would use, a lot of not neurologists, they've come away from that with a deeper understanding of where it's coming from, which is good, but a lot of traditional general practitioners will call it a chemical imbalance.
Okay.
And the reason why they call it a chemical imbalance, first of all, is because there's high levels of stress hormone like cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and low levels of the feel-good hormones like serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins. And so they see this imbalance in chemistry, and they're like, okay, it's a chemical imbalance. But the thing is, people aren't born that way. It gets created and adapted over time based off experiences. Like, for example, I go through a fearful situation, maybe a traumatic situation, for example. I used to be fearful of flying. I used to hate it, man. I used to fear flying, like on planes. Bro, I'd be sitting here in the seat, like freaking the shit out, bro. Like as soon as turbulence happened, I'm like, I'm gonna die.
Do you know the song by Lil Jon, Turbulence?
No, I don't want to listen to it either. Okay, and I learned that. The first time I flew on a plane, sure, it might have been unknown, but I was young and I didn't think anything of it. But over time, because my dad would watch air crash investigation, and we also had a really bad experience trying to fly into Fiji. There was a storm, and as we were landing, we had to take off again. Anyway, these situations, it wasn't just a situation that happened, but my memory kept bringing that back up every time I got onto a plane. So I thought, oh, like, if there's turbulence, that means this could happen again, or that means something worse could happen. So I'd start playing all these images and situations in my mind of things that could happen. So now that this started to occur, every time that image will come back to my mind, that same stress hormone that I experienced in the situation that I had would rise, right? So the same high cortisol, low serotonin, because I was scared. So my chemistry was poor. Now, if I just continued to, if I spent a lot of time on planes, okay, say I flew on a plane every single day and I never faced my fear of flying, I'd always be anxious. I'd always be stressed. So that's what people do in life, because there's going to be traumatic situations in social scenes. There's going to be traumatic situations with himself. There's going to be traumatic situations in their family. And because they're always with the family, or they're always with people, or they're always working, wherever those traumas are, they're going to not just start to experience it in that situation all the time that they're always in, but they're also going to start to experience it outside of that situation, because a lot of people take their work home, take their social social relationships home, and well, they're always with themselves. So if they're anxious about their own well-being, then they're always with themselves, so they're always going to be anxious, you see.
So, are you saying traumatic experiences? I couldn't quite follow all the way that are built up at some point. For example, like in an airplane, and then it keeps following you pretty much.
Sure.
Does it also overflow in other areas of life, or is it more a situational thing in that case?
Totally.
Like you're in an airplane and you experience it, and then maybe at a younger age you just don't have the capacities, the, let's say, consciousness, the information, all those things to kind of like work through it and be like, everything will be fine. You told about this one experience. So is that also overflowing into other areas of life? So you said you take it home. That was kind of like a little bit of a disconnect for me. You take it home in just like a general state of, an overall state of anxiety. Is that what you talk about?
Yeah. So when it comes to, I'll create a little bit more clarity around this. So if, for example, when I'm younger, I get told that you should be more polite like Stephen, okay? Because I've got a friend called Stephen. He's a childhood friend. Yeah, sure.
Because I'm holding the microphone. My neck is like all stiff already. God,
Doing a little bit of a trap exercise
Ooh.
there. So if my mum was to say, be kinder like Stephen, then I might be anxious about not being kind. So I would constantly think, I need to make sure I'm the nice guy. I need to make sure that I'm always polite. So I'd get anxious about that, right? So that would start to occur.
Yep.
And that's only if I was in a situation where I seeked my mother's love, and in my mind I thought that if I am to do what she says, which is be kinder like Stephen, then I will be loved. So now there's two pieces to that. One, I'm being compared to another person. So I'm constantly going to be in this mentality of comparison of how kind I am. And two, I'm also getting in a state where I think that in order to receive love, I need to be kind. So now I'm always in this place where even if I feel bad about myself, my first priority is to be kind to others, even if I'm betraying my own happiness. So this honestly started to happen in my own mind. It wasn't because my mother said that. I'm still sort of figuring out bits and pieces around a lot of that, where that came from. But I was honestly a really good kid. I was always trying to be the nice guy. I was always constantly betraying my own happiness in order to please others. So because this would happen, what started to occur was that I'm only good enough if I'm very kind. But the moment I don't feel like I'm being kind because someone says, Kieran, you're just a dickhead, or if someone doesn't respond the way I think that they should, because I've been kind, now I'm in a place where my self-worth gets diminished, okay? And the moment my self-worth gets diminished, I don't feel, worthy, right?
Worthy of love that
Correct.
You wanted from your mother.
Worthy of love, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking that right now, because I'm not worthy in my own mind, I'm also not worthy of love. So I'm not worthy for a girlfriend. I'm not worthy for my friends. I'm not worthy to do well in school. I'm not worthy. So this would go on and on and on. So this constant feeling of not being good enough would just weigh down on me.
That's
and
huge.
and now this was just only one part of my life that came into that. There was many other factors that came into that. So it wasn't just the relationship with my family, or it wasn't just with the way I thought that I needed to be in order to receive love. There was many other factors. So I'd always try to be the positive guy. I was always trying to be the nice guy. And if I felt sad, then in my mind I think, I can't be positive right now. Therefore I can't go and interact with in a social way, because people know me as a positive person. And if I show up not positive, then also I'm deepening that sense of unworthiness, right? Because now people are thinking, Kieran's positive, he'll show up happy. And here I am wanting to show up happy, but I can't because I feel sad. So now I'm going to get anxious about showing up in that situation. So I'd fall into situations like that. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah, it does a lot. It makes sense.
Yeah. So there'll be oftentimes a lot like that. And what I mean by taking it home is that I'm not just worried about it when I'm in the situation. I'm fearful of it when it could occur. So now I'm thinking, 2 days before a party, I'm anxious. I'm like, I need to change how I feel. So now I'm worried about something that hasn't even happened yet, right? So I'm not only suffering something that happened maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because those situations came from 5 or 10 years ago, but I'm also suffering something that hasn't even happened yet and might not even happen.
Wow,
So that's,
I love that.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
training.
just the two big things that I want to add something on. It's
Please.
actually quite crazy. When you told me anxiety coach, I had like a few ideas. In general, anxiety, I thought it's not something that I personally really struggle with, but this really hit home with me right now a lot. Just like, let's say, looking forward to a certain social event, and I'm like, just today with this podcast, today with the idea that I told you about me wanting to speak at some public events, my attitude towards right now is like, ooh, there's a little bit of anxiety. Let's go there. Let's let's do exactly that. And I don't even see it as anxiety because my reframing is like opportunity. Like it's not exactly anymore. But if I think back to it, God, like back in the day when it was down to like social gatherings, I was never really good at that. I always had like struggle, not always, in certain situations not, but if it was a bigger event where I didn't have that much, let's say, maybe control or impact, just basically things were happening to me, I always felt, I was like, it's not going to be fun, I'm not going to enjoy it, I'm not going to be able to show up the way I want to show up. Very caught up in your identity. That's kind of like another thing that you address. Oh, I'm the positive guy. Oh, I'm the social guy. What if I'm not going to be able to be the social guy? Oh no.
Exactly.
But the huge thing that you addressed, that it's kind of quite funny, it's actually pretty much the core of everything that I talk about, like on my second channel. I talk a lot about, let's say, self-optimization on the outside level when it comes to how you look, when it comes to your friendships, your relationships, meeting new people. What else? Just making maybe a little bit more money. And overall, just, let's say, going out there and pursuing more and dipping outside of what you think you can do. And with that, I get like questions all the time, like, Danny, how can I get and stay in shape? Danny, how can I go out and meet the girl? Danny, how can I, like, not to say that I'm like, oh yeah, I got all these questions, like, I know no, but like, that's what happens if like, I put myself like that a little bit out there. And then what would be another one? Another big one would be like, how can I, oh yeah, that's huge. How can I start do YouTube videos and like express myself on camera? I think that is actually probably my biggest expertise by now. And so while I can give people all these little tricks, like just think back to me, for example, working with that nutrition company and they wanted to shoot that video and they wanted to come off cool and like basically lighthearted and relatable. And it was, we all the time try to optimize things on the outside, but then to get back to the topic of like what happened back when your mom told you to be nice or to be quiet or all the general platitudes which have a good core. I think all the, let's say, mainstream advice, if you will, is really good advice, but is usually like be yourself can be the best and the worst, most horrible advice. I break that down in a few videos. But what I want to come down to is the biggest answer to all of the questions that I mentioned before, how to get in, like if you really struggle with it, if you tried it for months, for years and it doesn't work, it all comes down to some inner barriers that hold you back. Like getting in shape is not that hard. Sure, you need to be like maybe a little bit genetically blessed if you want to get into amazing, crazy shape, but everyone can like look decent.
More than decent. Everyone can look more than decent.
Yeah, for sure. I just mean like, no, not everybody can be like a pro high-level athlete, but everybody can get into very good shape.
This is a big thing as well that I learned is, at the end of the day, what I might be capable of, you might not be. What you might be capable of, I might not be. So in a physical sense, right, there's differences in capabilities, right? So I might be able to squat a certain weight, but you might be able to jump a certain height. Or I might be able to be a certain level of agility, but you might be able to run a certain speed, right? So there's different physical capabilities. I might get into the ring with Mike Tyson and get absolutely flattered, and I might go train and for 20 years, right, non-stop every single day. He might not train a single another day, and we'll still step in the ring, and he might absolutely flatten me, right? So what I'm physically capable of, others might not be, vice versa. What others are physically capable of, I'm not. So there's all sorts of things. And this also comes down to memory as well. You know, different people have different levels of memory, different levels of operations, the different stimulations of the left and the right brain, different capabilities within language, right? So now these are still physical capabilities, okay? But at the end of the day, what consciousness is that's a level achievable by anyone. And it's that same level of consciousness. Consciousness is this, being. It's just simply being. It's like, if I'm here, I'm not thinking about what I'm doing 5 minutes from now. I'm not thinking about the sentence that you just asked. All I'm focused on right now is this moment, nothing else, right? I'm just simply focused on this microphone, this camera, you, that's it, right? So that's all I'm focused on. That's consciousness, the ability to simply be, right? Now, everyone's capable of that. The problem is the outside world eats away at that possibility of being conscious. So now, if I was to ask not just you, but anyone listening, out of everything that's happened so far today, up until this point where they're listening in, or up to this point where we're sitting down, how much of today, including everything my hand's done, everything my mind's done, everything, every blink I did, every smell I took in, how much of that has been a conscious action, right?
Conscious in a way of like you made the
I know I'm
decision to
selling
do this.
I
Oh,
know
okay,
I'm
okay. I mean also that.
I know
okay.
my fingers are clenching right now.
Okay.
So
So
how
the,
much-
even the smallest things, not just like making breakfast, what am I gonna eat, but
Correct.
even just like blinking.
Correct. Yeah. How much of that has actually been conscious today?
Your cells repairing.
Yeah. I'm conscious you're repairing. Go on, cells.
Grow.
Come on. That'd be
The gym bro outside the gym drinking the protein shake. So conscious.
Conscious, bro. But the thing is, most of it's subconscious. Of
course.
Ultimately, we're more than 99%.
Autopilot.
Correct. We're more than 99% autonomous. If I was to get you to stand up and walk to that door over there, you would pick up 25 different smells and not even realize. Unless they're actually really substantial smells, like, oh, that smells horrible. Or,
Correct.
oh, I love that, right? Yeah. So you wouldn't actually notice them, but your body's still registering all these. So there's so many autonomous actions your body's doing without even realizing. And this means we're so subconscious, all right? Which means that we're constantly operating in a subconscious level, which means we're not actually properly conscious. But however, people can work on that level of consciousness, right? By that, I mean, if I was to work on my fears, if I was so okay with the spider being there, I could be conscious with you. But if I'm not okay with the spider being there, I'm going to be very subconsciously worried about the spider, aren't I? So that's a subconscious process. But I can still work on my fear of spiders to the point where even if there's a spider here, I can have a lovely conversation with you and not even think about the spider because it's completely fine with him. That's what I mean by being able to be conscious. I can work on my fears, I can work on my worries, I can work on my anxieties to the point where I can be fully conscious with someone or with myself or whatever. That's what I mean by being conscious. I mean, at the end of the day, a human has between 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So how many of those am I actually consciously having? Only about 5% of those. At the end of the day, 95% of those thoughts, I don't even notice, but they're still going on, which means those fears, those worries that I don't think I'm thinking about, they're still going on in the background.
Yep.
So which means
Yep,
that, when I eventually walk into the mall or when I go into a bar and I see a girl that I want to talk to, but I'm afraid of someone that's attractive because I've been afraid of attractive women for most of my life. And
How's it now?
oh, mate, so much better. Yeah, so much better.
Want to talk about the story we talked about before?
Oh man, not
No,
that story.
no.
That is.
I'm like Kieran. How open are you? You want to talk about old stories? He's like, yeah, I'll talk about everything. And he tells me a story. That's one of the things I will not talk about today. It's nothing too crazy. It's all good.
Yeah. Let's just leave it there. Yeah. But yeah, like I'm very capable of now just walking up to a girl I think is very attractive and be able to say, I think you're pretty. I'd love to take you for coffee. But at the same time, also be capable of receiving rejection and be completely fine. So that never, bro, I couldn't even speak to a girl before. I could never approach a girl. Even if a girl approached me, I'd be like, I'm Kieran. Hi. Like what you said before, right?
And like it's all funny now, but the moment you said it, I have so many situations of seeing guys like that. I was maybe a little bit like that. Back in the day, I was always like getting red when I talked to girls. And it was pretty funny to a point where I became pretty good. Like I started to work on it quite early. I would say like age 16, 17, I was like, yo, make a conscious effort to get better at it. And like around 17, 18, I was like pretty good, like social, asking girls out, being quite assertive with it. But at the first few interactions, I was still like, I was going out with my boys and approaching girls like cold, like just like, hey, what's up, who are you? But I was reddening up while I was talking, and it was like, well, I was like, even at that point, I was like, wow, it's so funny. Like, I can do it. Not, of course, not all the time. Like, still have like bad days, bad mood, bad states, however you want to call it. But I'm reddening up like this so deeply subconscious, this fear, and I'm like really fighting the demons right now. And I'm not sure if it was all like the right approach of kind of like, I don't know. I was basically in the moment. Yeah, I was really facing the fear, and I was like kind of like observing myself while that happened. This like I feel good on the outside. I'm like, I can do this, but for some reason I'm reddening up. And I remember sitting in the school, and I talked to this one exchange student girl, and I didn't even have really an agenda. Like I don't know if that sounds bad, but she wasn't like that attractive. I was just like, let's talk to her, and I kind of like challenged myself to be the guy who goes up to the exchange student girl, because nobody did. It was like her first day. She was like lonering, you know. And then I'm sitting with her, and I'm like reddening up like a tomato. And then this one guy, definitely a little bit more on the insecure side, but hey, we're all on our journey. And he was like, Danny, you're talking to the girl, doing well, but like, why were you reddening up like a tomato? And I was just like, yeah, bro, like, I had to like overcome my fear and talk to her. Like, it didn't feel super comfortable, but like, hey. And he was like, oh yeah, respect.
That's huge, dude. That's really huge. And like
that went away at some point, just like, I don't remember when it went away. It just went away around like half a year later.
Totally.
Of having like 30 times, I'm like, tomato mode, you know?
I love that. Yeah. Tomato time. Yeah. It's my superpower.
I'm like, hey girl, you want to see a magic trick? Yeah. All red.
Dude, what an opening line, by the way. Eh? That's going to break the ice. But yeah, where I was getting with, actually, that's a perfect way to say it, is at the end of the day, if I'm having a conversation and I'm going red.
It's raining.
Yeah, it is raining. It is. Yeah. Do you need to move, or you're okay?
I will see. Maybe we'll stop in a minute, but as of now.
Okay, that's okay. So the reason why I might go red in a conversation is because I'm already pre-assuming of what could happen in the conversation when it hasn't happened yet. So I might be thinking, oh, this person's going to reject me, this person's not going to like me, this person's going to judge me. But it's not happened yet. They're still talking to me. Yet I'm still getting this subconscious reaction in my mind.
Maybe hold the mic for a second. I will
Absolutely.
cover the camera.
All right. So do I continue speaking, or do I?
Yeah, just so I hear you.
Yeah, cool. Cool. So that process would constantly go on. And the way that it's fixed is a process called neuroplasticity.
Ooh.
So have you heard of the phrase neuroplasticity?
I heard from Joe Dispenza.
Yes,
That's
yes.
the guy?
Yep.
Did
So
he coin it?
he's, I don't know if he coined it, but maybe he did, maybe he didn't, I don't know. But I actually learned this from a few other neurologists as well.
The
Another,
camera just received the cake.
yeah, I like that.
All right.
All right, cool. Good job with the camera. Nice, very
So neuroplasticity.
innovative. Yeah, whoa, don't fall in the pool. Damn, dude. You want to go swimming? Yeah, and neuroplasticity oftentimes happens accidentally for a lot of people. For example, if people are constantly trying to talk to a girl to get over their fear, that's an act of neuroplasticity in a subconscious way. I'm not purposely trying to change the program in my mind. I'm just simply trying to get over my fear. So neuroplasticity is the act of, I know these thoughts happen subconsciously, so I'm going to sit down now, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to journal on it, I'm going to do something about that thought process, and I'm going to change that program within my mind. That's neuroplasticity. So that process can be done consciously rather than at a subconscious level. And that's more of what I dive into myself with people, is actually giving people the opportunity to learn these tools that allows them to reprogram their brain, reprogram their mind, so that they don't have to be in a place of paralysis of, I know I need to face my fear, I need to go talk to this girl, but I just can't, right? So it trains the brain to get to that point where it finally can go talk to that girl so that it can get over the fear, you see?
Yep.
Because I was at a point where I couldn't talk to a girl, and even if I wanted to challenge myself, I couldn't. So it had to be I had to be in a state first so that I could challenge it before I could get over that fear. But I wasn't even there. So neuroplasticity was me getting my journal and doing a process called future journaling, which is basically taking the thought of when I would normally be afraid of talking to this girl, I find a sense of confidence and I just go for it without the fear of rejection. And if I just wrote that over and over again in different ways, if I meditated on it, meaning I'm becoming more okay with the spider on the table. Yeah, we are totally getting away from the spider on the table. Let's go.
Doesn't stop raining.
Yeah, man. It's getting heavier.
Positive about it. Yeah, we're just gonna keep it running right now.
Yeah, cool. I like the optimism though. I like the fact that you're just going so optimistic about it. But with me wanting to consciously change that process, I would start to apply these tools. There's of course different ways to go about these tools. I don't have to sit down and journal my brains out, right? And so there's other ways to go about it. But these are two real big factors that applied for me. And a big thing for me was when these subconscious patterns would happen, what would happen to my self-worth? It would get lower, right? So I'd see this person on a pedestal almost.
When you're not able to take action, or
correct. So
or just experience the fear.
Totally.
Both.
So at the end of the
I
day,
mean, it's kind of like the same.
yeah, man. So I mean, if you imagine myself as this glass, which is lower, and the girl is this bottle, which is up here. So if this is her, and I see her worth up here, I see my worth here, I don't feel worthy of this person, do I? So that's the way I perceived myself, and that was coming from the subconscious thought processes. So what I had to do first was either bring their worthiness down to me, which is an ideal, because that means I'm like I'm speaking negatively about them within my mind.
Yep.
So I'm doing more negative actions and creating a negative thought process. So instead, I want to raise my worth, right? So because that's what people often do. They see people they think are more worthy than them, and they judge them. They get jealous of them. They try to bring them down so they feel more worthy about themselves because now they're more equal. You see?
Yeah.
So what I want to do instead is raise my worth by utilizing these tools, by working on how I can feel good about myself, by working on a process that a lot of people in Bali talk about, self-love, right? Self-love is great, but I want self-respect first, because if I don't respect myself, how can I love myself? So self-respect comes from things such as discipline's a great action to create self-respect. Ultimately, it's about keeping promises to myself. So self-integrity. So that means if I want to build self-respect within myself, that would be me saying, okay, I'm going to meditate 5 minutes every day. And I meditate 5 minutes every day, right? Or that might be me saying, I'm going to get these 5 tasks done today no matter what. And I get these 5 tasks done no matter what. So that's what self-integrity is. And at the end of the day, if I'm saying to you, hey, bro, let's meet for coffee at Starbucks, and I don't show up for coffee at Starbucks, and I say, sorry, bro, I'm late, let's do it tomorrow, and I don't show up tomorrow again. And this process keeps happening. Over time, you're not going to trust me, right?
Yep.
So, and also you're not going to respect me. So this is what I'm doing to myself if I'm constantly saying, I'm going to do this,
I love that,
but I
dude.
don't. Yeah, so if I'm constantly going against my own self-trust, I'm going against my self-respect, which means I can't learn to love myself. So that's a big thing of how people can also take an action to start to alter their own self-worth, their own perceived self-worth. Because now what's going to happen is my self-worth, now I'm going to feel better about my own actions, I'm going to feel better about my own self, and I'm going to trust my word, which means that if I tell myself, I'm going to go speak to this girl, I'll be more likely to be able to go speak to that girl. You see what I mean?
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I get an award for like
Yeah.
multitasking,
Yeah, man.
setting up a new studio here.
I definitely
We're
can't do
ready
that.
to
I
rock.
don't know how you actually engage in some sort of listening right then,
Dude,
because
I totally feel you.
my mind would have been
Like,
freaking.
Maybe grab it.
Yeah, of course.
Well, 2 things that we can talk. Like, first of all, the huge nugget. Like a lot of what you say, I'm like actually kind of surprised of how very familiar it is to what I share all the time. To come back again to the point of, let's say, trauma, realizing where it maybe started very often in a childhood, with your mom telling you to be quiet, with your teacher telling you you're not smart. Like, look at you. Like for me, for the longest time, I thought I'm not, let's say, intellectually kind of like I'm not an intellectual person. I am lazy maybe, and then I noticed like like that came from school, from my rebelliousness, which manifested maybe in laziness, because all the time I felt like, well, what's the point here? While still having subjects where I got along with the teacher, and there was kind of like a little bit of a personal investment, understanding. Wow, all of a sudden I'm almost one of the best in the class. Oh, that's funny. Like looking back at it, you know. So that's where that seed was planted. I also never thought that I'm a creative guy. I always thought like I'm very rational now. And then I'm looking at what I'm doing. Oh, freaking, you know? So basically kind of getting to know yourself and understanding where these limiting beliefs came from that really hold you back.
I do want to say that you must be so creative because you came up with Trixie as a name for a spider. So I want to just.
That was from a
point
cartoon. That was from a
okay.
cartoon.
Yeah.
Well, and to kind of like, I'm going to get to the huge nugget that Kieran just dropped that I think is quite interesting. I always talk about it, but I never coined it that way. But basically to come down to the point of like why so many people are afraid to speak on camera, I think that is so interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Like a person can be like a major like CEO, manager, have a beautiful wife, kids, great relationship with his parents. Maybe not that perfect. Maybe not that perfect,
Oh,
but
man, even that
but
perfect.
pretty good. But yet not really dove deep, and not to say that we did by any means, but not dove deep into, let's say, his deep insecurities and really, let's say, went outside of the box to do something that really intimidated him emotionally. Put a camera in front of his face, and usually most people just totally freeze up. And I noticed that, like, I did a lot of freelance work, and that was kind of like the starts, like 3-4 years ago, where I started to think more and more and more in depth about, let's say, where these, let's say, call them insecurities, are being formed. Like really grown up, successful career people that I'm interviewing, and I really needed to really help them out and make them comfortable and be like, you're doing great, like we're just chilling, it's just, imagine it's just me and you, like just look to the camera, but kind of like through the camera, if you would be telling me that, doing all these little, kind of like a photographer, you need to make your model feel comfortable in a way. The same with video, even more, because people need to speak, people need to kind of like be themselves. And where's that coming from, that people are afraid to speak in front of the camera? It's deep down, just people are gonna see me, people are gonna judge me, people are gonna have a picture of me that is maybe not accurate. But like, why would it matter that much? Even me in this podcast right now, this thought crossed a few times my mind. But I think maybe the analogy of this spider maybe would be good. It's kind of like this thought and this fear and this little anxiety of me, I said this thing, how am I gonna come across? Just, that's fine, that's okay, okay. People who really care, people who really want to know me, they will know. That's kind of like, just maybe some part of me, maybe I'm trying to be cool or whatever. But to come down and to give the ball back to basically this saying of self-respect, I talk about it all the time, as you said. It's like, you do things to be able to trust yourself and to respect yourself.
Totally.
But the analogy this way around, I never heard it, and I absolutely love it. I don't know where you got it from. It's kind of like if you have a friend and you set up meetings with him all the time, and I'm thinking of a few people right now, where I really liked them, but they made me just lose respect for them because so unreliable. I'm always a little bit late on time, but I'm pretty good to keep a promise. Like if I say I do something, there's very unlikely that I won't. And I think that comes from that if I say something to myself that I'm going to do something, it's very unlikely that I won't. And I think that is connected. And just this thing of, if you have a friend, like just, because I think that the concept of like, it's a little bit abstract. If you say people, well, you want to have more self-respect, self-trust, further down the road, self-love, start making promises to yourself that you keep. For people, it's like, yeah, sounds good, but I'm not sure. But think of the one person who always let you down. Did you lose trust? Did you lose respect a little bit? Maybe you still like them. Maybe it's still your old buddy, but you're kind of like, he's a little bit of a mess. Did that happen? I think for a lot of people that did. And the same thing goes on inside of you. You think you kind of like yourself, but you're like, I'm a little bit of a mess. Or that's where real self-hatred comes in, where a lot of people are like, you're a piece of shit, you're worthless. And many people have that same type of self-talk, which everyone does a little bit. Sometimes, I'm sure you do. I'm sure.
Oh yeah, mate. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I hadn't experienced that, and I was experiencing that. So it's because I'm experiencing those things in my head, or that the self-judgment, that I get to constantly learn about where it's coming from. I get to constantly learn how to deal with it. I get to constantly learn how to grow through it. At the end of the day, if I never have a maths problem, how can I get good at maths? If I never have a problem in my life, how can I get good at living this life? How can I get good at building relationships? If I never have a struggle of learning how to build a relationship with myself, I'm never going to learn how to build a relationship with someone else. At the end of the day, how my inner world is, that's what I treat with my outer world. So if I'm nasty to myself, would I not be nasty to you? If I'm kind to myself, would I not be kind to you? So oftentimes people become snappy, people become agitated, people become frustrated, people become jealous. Why? Because they're nasty to themselves. And they don't realize that, but it's about becoming aware of that, because at the end of the day, if I was always kind to myself, I would never ever need to be nasty to anyone else. So it's about how I treat myself first. And the fact that you just talked about exactly what you said, how you treat your own self-integrity, how you treat your own self-trust, your own self-respect, you keep to your word when you say that you're going to do something. So you've built that integrity within yourself. Therefore, that's also how you treat other people, you said. So it's how you treat yourself first.
Just to give a very small example to again bring it back to the ground in a way. Yesterday, I wanted to shoot a video that I wanted to shoot for a few days, and it's quite simple. I just talked about like a few recommendations of affordable countries to travel to. It's not a big video, just something that I wanted to kind of like get done. I'm showing up, it's not a good sunset, and the battery of my stabilizer is dead. But I'm saying, today was a day. I called up a guy to help me out to film this thing. I'm like, oh, dude, he's like, should we go back? Should we get new batteries? Should we charge? And I'm like, the sun is going to be down, bro. Like, it's going to be dark. So I was just like, yeah, just hold it handheld and I'll rock it out. And for 10 minutes straight, maybe with 1 or 2 cuts, I delivered what I wanted to deliver. It's not a masterpiece. It's not my best work. Who knows? Like, definitely not. But the fact that I got it done makes me so much more pumped about today, shooting this podcast. Today, this is one of the first podcast episodes that I'm shooting. I'm a little bit like, oh, is the audio is going to be good? Will it rain? Freaking rained. It could be like, no, it rained. Yeah. Everything is ruined. No.
You keep pushing forward, man.
You know?
That's
And
awesome.
the reason why the rain thing, I wasn't even thinking about it. It wasn't like a conscious, like, I'm overcoming the rain now. It was just like, oh, yeah, it's raining. But I think, I'm pretty sure it's coming back from the momentum of yesterday. Me being like, oh, should we quit the video? Oh, you know what? Let me just film it, and I will see if it's good. If it's not, I can still toss it. But let me just stand there and deliver it. And that's where the momentum keeps going on. I think that momentum can build into weeks and years. And I know there's waves of like this kind of like, it's a little bit different to self-trust. It's kind of connected, but it's more momentum. Momentum of a type of momentum that builds self-respect and self-trust.
Yeah, man. Momentum's huge. At the end of the day, if I feel progressive with myself, I'm going to be also progressive in other areas of my life. If I feel like I'm regressive, meaning I am going backwards in something, I'm losing a relationship, I'm getting worse with work, I'm not able to make progress in my work. So if I constantly feel like that I'm regressing, then I'm going to start to regress in other areas of my life because now I'm in a regressive mentality, you know. But the same goes for momentum. If I'm in a progressive mentality because I'm being progressive with myself, so I'm constantly at the gym pushing myself. I'm constantly...
This guy is pushing like crazy. I'll tell you the story afterwards. He didn't seem that nice, I'll tell you.
Oh, man, I don't look nice in the gym. That's one place I really don't look good.
That's good, though.
Yeah, thanks, mate. And if I'm constantly progressive in a way where I'm pushing myself to do a little bit better with my meditative practices, with my journaling, and I'm staying consistent with that stuff, I feel like I'm in a progressive state. So I'm going to take that progressive state of the way I treat myself to the outside world. That was a way of you treating yourself in a progressive state, which was, I'm going to do this film no matter what, which was yesterday, right? So that's a progressive mentality. And now you're able to take that progressive mentality in today and you're going to be able to grow a bit more. That growth is going to come first from you feeling like you're progressive within yourself. So that's the first step. Otherwise, the growth outside won't happen. If I'm in a aggressive mentality of, oh man, I'm going backwards, I'm not good enough, what's that doing? Lowering my self-worth. Now, if I want to be progressive and being more confident with girls, I'm already beating myself up because I'm feeling regressive. There's no way I'm going to go speak to that girl, you see? Because now I'm putting her on a pedestal, I'm putting me below her, I'm looking up at her and thinking, nah, if I get rejected by her, it's game over for my self-worth. So no, I'm not going to speak to her, you see? Yep. So that's the constant process that would be going on within myself anyway. So I totally agree with you about the momentum side of things. It's huge.
And I think another big thing is also interpreting things in the right ways and learning to do so. Many ways to do it, but first of all, what I mean is right now, yesterday, me still pushing through and recording that video, and also today pushing through and just like, oh, it rains, few weird shots of like reassessing. You could see it in a way of, you could see it like that. Yesterday, the video is crap. The lighting is not good. The movement is a little shaky. I screw up. I'm worthless. What am I thinking? How am I gonna like get anything done today? Like, you're shooting a podcast. You didn't like chose a proper location. You didn't look at the weather forecast. You're worthless. Like, you're so unprofessional. You could look at it like that. Or the way that I said it before. Picking up the example of talking to girls. You could feel a lot of anxiety around it, which me, after talking about it a good bit, being single for like half a year, practicing just my social skills in general, getting pretty good at it, I still experience this anxiety, so I could beat myself up over it. I may walk over and have a negative reaction, and then I could beat myself up over it. Or, like, you can interpret it like that. I'm like, I'm getting a little bit caught up in this line of thinking, but let's say you do get the rejection. There's, again, ways of interpreting it. You can interpret it for yourself. You can interpret everything for yourself or against yourself. You get a rejection. Wow, you're the best. You walked over there. You showed some real guts. Everybody who's seen you rejected, still people will respect you. Most of them, even the guys who are going to be like, ha, ha, deep down they know. They know who they are and who you are. Even if they don't subconsciously, they know. Like, you know, your nature and biology feels the big D energy. That's just facing your fears. That is one of the most masculine things that you can do. It's like people talk about what it means to be like a real man. It's facing your fears, in my opinion.
For me, masculinity is vulnerability. In my eyes, it takes a real man to be fully vulnerable and fully authentic.
Because you believe that you still will do well and that you're strong enough.
Totally. I mean, if I'm to be vulnerable, if I'm to be authentic, it's because I'm not basing my self-worth based off my vulnerabilities or based off my insecurities. I'm not basing my self-worth off that, which puts me in a position where I feel comfortable to speak about that. Because now, if other people know this insecurity, that means my worthiness is going to be lower than theirs. Or if other people know my insecurity, then that means I'm not as good as them, or I'm not good enough, right? So that's a mentality that would go on in my mind. Maybe other people might relate to that, so that's what I experienced. And with me being able to alter that relationship with myself of, actually, my insecurities don't alter my worthiness. My insecurities don't alter the way I am or how masculine I am. So I learned to be comfortable with that. And because I could be comfortable with that, I could be vulnerable about it with other people. So that for me is being able to step into masculinity of, you know what, I'm in a state of power, empowerment. I'm in a state of being masculine, being driven, being confident, even if I have these insecurities. So that's what it takes to be masculine in my eyes, definitely.
Oh, I think it's very similar to how I see it. In a way of, that is facing fears.
Yeah, that's
you face your insecurities
Absolutely.
Openly.
Yeah.
And like being vulnerable is like you have vulnerabilities and you present yourself in a way where people could attack them. You're open and vulnerable to attack somebody who thinks he could not handle it is wouldn't do it. So I think it's the act of courage. So I would say courage and facing your fears.
Oh, courage is a good word as well.
Yeah, yeah.
At the end of the day, courage and confidence are two different things. Confidence is like tunnel vision, right? Courage is like stepping into clarity, being able to see things as they are, and then no longer seeing that fear as something that would be problematic. So what I mean by that is, if I'm confident, it means I know that fear's there. It's like, okay, if I was going to talk to a girl and I wanted to get confident, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk to this girl and I'm just going to say this, this, and this. So that's being confident, right? So I go over, I speak to the girl. Oh, okay, I did it. She rejected me, but I did it, right? So that's being confident. But having courage is being like, okay, I see the situation. I'm actually aware of the fear that I have about the possible rejection. So it's being about clarity. So I actually see the fear, I see the situation, I see what could happen, but I'm okay with the fear occurring, yet I'm still going to go up to her and speak to her anyway. That's courage. That's the difference between confidence and courage. Confidence is like egging yourself on. Courage is just being completely calm and being able to step into that fear with clarity. So yeah, big difference. But courage, for sure, I'm with that word. I love that.
I like that,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I like that a lot.
I do have only 5 minutes left, by the way. Yeah. And
Sorry?
I do only have 5 minutes left, by the way. And then
Yeah, man, I was actually about to wrap it up. What are you up to afterwards?
I need to go meet someone for coffee. So
Nice. Where are you meeting?
Yeah. Barawa, if you know that sort of area. It's just like
Yeah. Who?
a lady named Aaliyah. She's actually friends with my roommate. My roommate did she does aura
Cool.
photography, so I sort of met her that way. And
Nice.
yeah, she had some cool happenings within her business side, so it should be interesting to catch up. And
Yeah, man. I was about to wrap it up. In a way of, what would you say is your goal going forward for the next 5 years, and what brought you to Bali right now?
Oh, good finishing question. So, for me to say what my goal is for the next 5 years, I'll quickly, briefly say what got me into anxiety coaching, because I never mentioned that. Firstly, my own suffering, and me sitting down in my lounge after crying, looking into the corner of my room, thinking I would never ever want even my worst enemy to feel this way. That was motivation. My own family, there's a lot of struggles there, so that motivates me. And finally, my friend who took his life because of anxiety, that for me was a big trigger. So that's why I stepped into it. And being in a place of wanting to do something about anxiety was, that led me to this idea of wanting to create a non-profit in New Zealand that helps people with mental health issues by creating a community, not a hotline. So hotline meaning, oh, I don't really want to talk to anyone because they won't understand me, right? So that's the fear around the non-profit that's currently going on that I noticed within myself and within some friends. So I would like to create a community where there's people that have suffered or are suffering that people can go talk to because they're relatable. It's like, oh, these people are going through the exact same struggles. And ideally there'll be an application so they can learn more about it, and they can start to understand their own struggles. So it's more of an introduction to them taking that first step of actually doing something about their struggle. So that's what I want to do. That would probably be longer than 5 years, but within the 5 years would definitely be along the lines of at least having some influence on bringing more meditation into the schools in New Zealand. So that's definitely a big goal.
Nice, man. That's big. All right. What brought you to Bali?
Bali, the mental health scene here is huge. The content creation scene right here is huge. All right, and the fact that when I was here in March in 2017, I fell in love with the waterfalls here in Bali. So that was actually a big, big.
You said you do like every once in a while you take people out to do some meditations.
So every Sunday I now take people out for meditation. It's like something called a water purification ceremony. It's a real traditional thing, but there's some cool science behind it that's been coming out recently, which is cool, about the benefits around there's certain electrons that waterfalls give off because of the rate and the friction and all that. And these electrons interact with your body in a way that helps decrease inflammation. So it's where the whole grounding science comes from, if you've heard much about the grounding science, about people being in nature and all that. Anyway,
okay.
Yeah, and help decreasing inflammation, opening up clarity and things. But anyway, that's sort of the benefits. And now I take people there into a scene like that where they're able to be more clear, and then they meditate. So it's like a real cool sort of complementary scenario where they get to really deepen that sort of meditative process, or at least begin it.
Dude, I want to go. All right, man. Let's wrap it up. Where can people find you? Instagram. What else do you do?
Coach Kezza, Coach Kezza, Kezza. I've also got my podcast, Pocket Coach and Pocket Coach Bites. So there's a short little 5-minute spills on bites, and then there's the interviews, which I'm definitely very intrigued to interview. Right? That'll be very cool on the actual Pocket Coach interview.
Let's do it, man. So, all right. It was a pleasure. It was a great talk. We pushed it through, man. I love it.
Awesome.
All right. Talk to you soon.